Hi there, this is Anne Marie, and this is the extended SPY report for May the 21st, 2013. We take a look at the IWM here. It's got three different formations colliding in this region. However, we did make a higher low and a higher high yesterday. What I do notice is this longer term SMI is very, very flat. Seriously, it is extremely flat. And so it is worth taking a look at in terms of saying, wait, if it's that flat, we should have slow grinding momentum. It should still move up as long as it stays in that zone. Notice this pullback here from a couple of days ago. It pulls us into support. This is the 0 line. Pops right back up. Here we have another formation. We do have technical divergence. To change a setting on the SMI there so it would sit properly in terms of crossover events. So anyway, what we are seeing is something not messy like this, but nice and clean, solid. What do we expect? With this kind of momentum, we expect a pullback into the support region. All right? So let's take a look at those levels really carefully, see what we need to do. The breach of 99.61 opens up the long. You want to be very careful here, taking longs, and the best thing to do with the long in this stage is to wait for it to pull back into support. It's sitting right here at the VWAP. This morning's pre-market is a little bit down. You know that changes, right? We've been building megaphones every day for the last 2 weeks. It looks like almost 2 weeks. And today is no different. We are building megaphone event in both the ES and the TF as it sits at 524 this morning. We are building megaphones. So what that means is as it pulls back and makes a newer low, it's going to bounce. Got to be real careful about that. All right? So it could also mean as it makes a new high, it rolls over. The best thing in the world to do is to watch for the congestion event where the resistance level takes over and wait for the breach there so that you can ride it up into at least resistance and then move to the next level. So the levels to watch here, 99.78. Midline here, 100.7, $100.07, excuse me, and then $100.39. Frontline support remains the 50% level between pivot 1 and resistance level 1. All right, and then if we lose that level, very likely that we smash into the pivot. Listen, how do you take advantage of trades like this that move this quickly? You set the conditional order that goes at the break and closes at the pivot. Could it mean that it runs down to the basement and there's all kinds of more movement? Yes, but if you have the trade set up in a space that could potentially be noisy, and that is a likelihood with a flat weekly VWAP that all the candlesticks are touching with the exception of one. With a flat weekly VWAP, who's to say it doesn't jockey back and forth? So you've got to take the trade that way. Look at the entire environment, not just the level. Okay? Learn that way to help you move forward. Okay, so if we lose the pivot, we're going to be watching this event. I think it ought to come all the way down into S1 or close to the base of S1 since we do have a gap event sitting right here. Not really super easy to see right there, but that's exactly what that is. That level is 98.17. You know that if we breach this area, it is a failed breakout. So if it breaks down from this region, it should come down all the way into the next level of congestion. All right, let's take a look at the cues. Let's do the same thing. Open. Okay, whatever. All right, so we know the cues are looking the same way. It looks a little bit weaker, actually, you know, because we've got dips under the VWAP. It does sort of recover. It's right on the line. And then we've got the pivot action that, you know, it's barely holding that pivot line, whereas, you know, in the IWM, what it's done is not even touch that pivot. And so this is a prime example of what I'm talking about. You see the pop from the pivot to the resistance level 1? That's a great trade. As it gets there, you get out. If you've got a flat moving average, you can anticipate that it's coming right back down into the pivot. You can take the trade that way, but it's a very tight trading range for you to work through. So be wise and don't allow your general reflexes, you know, unless you're some kind of cat or ninja, don't allow your general reflexes to help you through that trade. You take care of it yourself through conditional orders that execute immediately as things get into support regions. And if you want to leave part of it on, then you can. And it's a great idea to do that, frankly. So the levels here to watch are, here's what we want to see. The breach over the midline. That's 74.25. It gets through this congestion event. We still have a higher low and a higher high, though this low really did retrace quite significantly. It is still higher. And so what we're looking for is the hold of the region above 74.25 into 74.40. It should go right up into R2 because R2 is so close, 74.57, and so on. Now, we also have a formation that, obviously I did not save here. We also have a formation that shows us that we are coming to the end of a pattern. And so we either move sideways or we start pulling back a little bit. Every pullback we have has been bought up. We're not to assume differently. Okay? So if we lose the pivot, notice if we lose the pivot right here in this cycle, we've had a high, a low, a lower high. That means if we roll over. If we lose the pivot action event here, it's going to come back into support level 1. If it comes back into support level 1 and loses it, easily it's going to come back into here. What this chart is telling us right here, if we look at this area as the breakout, it's come in to test it and has held. If it rolls over again with a lower high, it should fail. And that's what we're looking for. Just look for the cycle event and plan your pivots around that region. Use the at-the-money options. They will help you the most and give you the greatest rate of return. All right, lastly, we're going to take a look at SPY. SPY's got a couple of things that are terminating, but they still have a little room to run, which is kind of interesting. Another higher low, higher high. The cycle is not getting broken. Excuse me. But we are sitting on top of the VWAP. This chart also a little bit stronger than the Qs, sitting above its pivot on the day, holding this area. What's the trade? Well, little sloppy here. You could take the aggressive trade out of this region. I would say probably not safe to do that until 167.28. At which point, you know, we can test the high, which is 167.56, and then we can go into this R2, which is very close to this level. As I mentioned, right now we are in a little bit of a rollover, but we have been building megaphones, and we just finished with a higher high relative to the time frame. Because of that, we expect that we will pop at some form at some time, and if we pull back here, open up at the pivot and hold it, it's going to be a great retest. Look at this. perfect retest. If it pops, we can expect it goes to R1. If it fails, we are now underneath the weekly VWAP. If we are underneath the weekly VWAP and we fail the resistance level 1 after coming in to test the pivot, we will fall back into the region, very likely go to S1. So watch this very carefully today. Lots of upside momentum still exists, but it is flat, it is extended, and it is extremely important that we pay attention to the formations, not only the price. Okay? Price is the only thing that makes us money. But if we don't pay attention to these formations, we will enter on a price without making sure that it's not a test of something rather than a confirmation of something else. And we're always looking for confirmation. Good luck trading today. Pay attention. Watch the levels, but also watch the movement in terms of saying, hey, listen, is this rolling over? Did I make a higher low and a higher high? What's going on with the bigger picture? If you get better at that, you will become markedly better at trading.